Good morning and welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com for Thursday, March 25th. Kevin Rogers with you, ready to get the party started here as we continue our countdown towards the Sweet 16 coming up on Saturday and Sunday. The NIT quarterfinals are tonight, right? Tonight's the quarterfinals, not the semifinals. I wrote semifinals here, but it's the quarterfinals. I'm actually going to, right now, fix that just because it's not the semifinals. We have 4 left, so we're going to make this the quarterfinals here. Let's change this up. Okay, now I feel better. Now it's the quarterfinals, the NIT, coming up this evening down in Texas, and we will take a preview of that coming up in just a little bit. But first, though, let's look at the NBA. And last night you had a ton of games. The favorites went 5-6 against the spread, 7-4 straight up. Today's a trade deadline, too, in the NBA. Nothing major yet. We'll see who gets moved. Kyle Lowry, a lot of rumors about him, where he would go. Nikola Vucevic from the Magic, could he go? I mean, Orlando may unload everybody, but we'll see what they do. But let's first look at last night in the NBA. And as I mentioned, you had a couple big upsets. Let's start with the Magic, all right? We usually go from top to bottom, but we'll begin right here with the Orlando Magic, pulling off a win over the Phoenix Suns. 112-111. That's a good job there by the Magic, down 8 after 1, and they come back. And actually, Phoenix had some opportunities there to win it. But the good news with the Suns losing, this is the only good thing, if you've been paying attention to this all year. The Suns have 29 victories. And the Suns have not had an ATS loss and a win yet this year. So at least them losing outright keeps that record intact at 29-0 against the spread. If the Suns won that game by less than 9 points, they would have their first ATS loss and a win. So they got to keep that record spotless. So good job by the Phoenix Suns by not winning that game last night and keeping the record at 29-0 against the spread and 29 wins. So the Suns end up losing that game to the Magic, and Orlando now for the second time in less than a week. They've picked up a really good win as a home dog, getting more than 9.5. Last week it was against Brooklyn, and last night against Phoenix. So good job by the Magic there, and we'll see if the entire team disappears after today's trade deadline. Now, I mentioned Kyle Lowry and the Raptors. They had lost 9 straight games going into last night against Denver. And it just seemed like maybe this line was a little bit off, and Denver was laying 1.5, coming off a win over Orlando, and I think they had won 6 straight road games. They were playing really well on the road. We talked about it yesterday. But Toronto just punches Denver in the face last night. 72 points in the first half, up 18 at the half, no looking back, win 135-111 over the Nuggets. And again, Toronto could be making moves today with the trade deadline, but the Raptors finally end their 9-game skid, and they beat up the Nuggets. So good win for Toronto, a team that's really kind of going nowhere fast. The Pacers, who seem like they were in that same boat too, they hold off the Pistons 116-111, and the Pacers back at home after obviously getting kicked out for a little bit due to the NCAA Tournament being in Indiana and Indianapolis, and their arena being used. So the Pacers back at home, and Indiana still has been a bit of a disaster as far as against the spread. When you look at what they've done here, and we talked about this yesterday, since February 24th, 0-8 run here, 1-8, 1-10, 3-10, 3-12 against the spread for the Indiana Pacers the last 15 games, and a lot of overs too. 6-1 overrun for Indiana. And look, I mean, this, and what's funny is this game, this 109-106 win over the Heat went to overtime, and it still stayed under by a few points. So Indiana's on a major overrun over the last, what is that? Less than 2 weeks, but still, Indiana's not been sharp, though. I mean, I know they beat Detroit, but Detroit's actually been, you know what? Look, Blake Griffin got traded. The Pistons really are going nowhere fast, but look at what they've done against the spread. 5-2 the last 7. They lost it. That's all since the All-Star break. 5-2. They hung with Charlotte, hung with Brooklyn, lost at home to San Antonio, but they beat Toronto. Granted, they were struggling. They won at Houston, blown out by the Bulls, lost to Indiana, but they've been competitive. And look, they're going to get a lot of points against Brooklyn here. And then after that, you get Washington a few times. Toronto's struggling. The Knicks are kind of up and down. I mean, Portland's a good team. But the Pistons have done a good job at least hanging around in these games. The Bucks end up holding off the Celtics 121-119. A game Milwaukee was absolutely cruising in. So if you had the Bucks, Giannis came back last night. You felt good about yourself. But then the Celtics end up outscoring them by 12 in the fourth quarter. And they were down huge, the Celtics. So for as bad as they've been on the road, to get this cover is kind of a miracle. But look at the road record, the Celtics, against the spread. 1-1, 1-2, 2-2 against the Rockets, 2-3, 2-4, 2-5, 2-6, 2-7, 2-8, 2-9 against the spread, the last 11 for the Boston Celtics. But they get the cover last night. Dallas was down, I don't want to say down big, but they were trailing early at Minnesota. And look at that second half for the Mavericks. 72 points they put on the Timberwolves, who scored just 53. So they outscored them by 19 in the second half to win by 20, 128-108. The Mavericks continue to play well right now, and it seems like they're creating some distance in the Southwest ahead of San Antonio. And we know that Houston's not a factor. New Orleans is under 500, and Memphis is hanging around 500, but they're probably not going to win the division. But Dallas right now, who was the favorite to win the Southwest going into this season, they are starting to create some separation. And honestly, if you want to look at a future, grab the Mavs here to win the Southwest. Like, I don't think it's crazy. This was from a few days ago. I want to look at this really fast with you before we go back to the scores from last night. Dallas, I mean, minus 300, but there's no reason to think unless Luka gets hurt, they don't win this division. Minus 300 isn't crazy. Look at Utah. They're minus 2,000 to win the Northwest. I mean, even the Heat, I don't know if they're a lock, minus 350. Brooklyn's playing well, but Philly's also playing well. I mean, and the Lakers are off the board now with LeBron out. But Dallas, minus 300, I don't think is nuts to lay. I really don't, to win this division. That they are playing very well at the moment. And Dallas right now, let's see, 2-3, 1-3, 4-2, 4-3, 5-3, 6-3, 8, 9-3 the last 12. They're playing well at the right time after they had a bit of a slump here. You withstood the slump. And now moving ahead, Indiana at New Orleans, at Oklahoma City, at Boston, at the Knicks, Washington before you face Utah. Dallas should be able to clean up here, even being on the road. And you got some tight games here, Utah, Milwaukee, Philly. But even here, you don't know if LeBron's going to be back by then. Anthony Davis isn't coming back that soon. So, again, I know it's a month away. Maybe, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know LeBron's prognosis. But who knows if the Lakers, if Anthony Davis and LeBron are back by then. Cleveland wins at Chicago. And I did say yesterday on here that the Cavaliers have been a terrible road underdog, and I'm not admitting any fault. That's just the stat. That's just the fact. I didn't take this game because I didn't have any faith in Cleveland, and I had no faith in Chicago. Colin Sexton didn't play for the Cavaliers, and they still won 103-94. Look at that defensive performance by the Cavs. That's pretty good. To go into Chicago, hold them to 94 points, because their previous 3 games on the road, blown out in all of them, won these 2 at Philly and Houston. Philly was in overtime. And then this road trip was abysmal, to say the least. And then before that, a couple more losses on the road. Lost by 38 at Boston. I mean, yeah, this Cleveland team wasn't very good on the road, but they faced Chicago. Actually, it was the first time they played Chicago this season. Kind of an odd scheduling quirk, as they'll get them a few times coming up later on. But the one thing I guess I don't want to say I nailed, because this isn't a prediction, but Chicago's a very tough team to trust at the United Center for some reason. On the road as a dog, worth playing. At home, they're very sketchy, the Bulls, in what they've done this season. either as a home favorite, they lose outright to Cleveland. As a home dog, they've had some bad losses. Just for some reason, they have not been great at home. They beat Minnesota in overtime, a game that they shouldn't have covered. They lost that game to Portland on the Damian Lillard 3. So Chicago hasn't really been very dependable at home this season. Houston was up 10 early on Charlotte. Again, it's the NBA. Early means nothing. But the Hornets, that's a good way to close out their road trip. Winning at Houston, 122-97. So the Rockets snapped their 20-game losing streak against Toronto. Then they come out and get blown out by Charlotte. So the Rockets are back into what they were. Victor Oladipo didn't play for Houston last night. Charlotte, here's the one thing I'll give them. They win at San Antonio and Houston to close out the trip. But this is why trends are so tricky. This road trip that Charlotte was on before the All-Star break, 6-0 to the over, all right? This road trip at Denver, you had a crazy fourth quarter to barely go over. And then pretty much 4 easy unders for the Hornets to close out the road trip. So you go from a 6-0 over run on this road trip. I mean, there's some overs here, even going back to the end of January. But then you get the fortunate over against Denver and then 4 straight unders. So that's why it's tough to totally depend on trends like that and say, oh, well, they've gone over in this many games because now it could turn around. But Charlotte, I'll give them credit, though. 2 wins here on this trip after facing 3 tough teams. You faced 2 teams that you should beat, and you did. And then you get the Heat and Suns at home and then back on the road again. We'll see how that trend goes again. You played out west all of those games. What was that again? 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 Western Conference opponents. Now Charlotte will get 5 of 6 Western Conference opponents in this stretch here coming up. All right. Memphis ends up winning at Oklahoma City, a game that the Thunder, without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I always feel like I mess up his name. Memphis was up early. Oklahoma City went up by double digits, but then the second half, look at that, 67 points for Memphis. Here's the key, though, in case you missed this game last night. You see the final, 116-107, over 218.5. All right. Oklahoma City was down 116-99 with a minute 20 to go. They scored 8 points in the final minute 20, the Thunder. So if you had the under in that game, that's a really terrible beat. And even, I mean, time ran out in Oklahoma City, but Memphis is up by 17, right? Up 17 with a minute 20 to go, and they win by 9. That you say, okay, let's not have anything foolish happen here if you got in late on Memphis. Now, granted, they were laying 4.5, 5. The Shea news came out that he was out, so that line jumped up. But Memphis got some revenge for losing to Oklahoma City last week, so the Grizzlies end up winning that one. Clippers go to San Antonio and beat the Spurs 134-101. This one, I believe I mentioned yesterday. If I didn't, I'm sorry, but I think I did. Clippers now have 12 wins as a road favorite this season. They're 11-1 against the spread in those wins. So when the Clippers are a road favorite and you like them, they're going to cover. Simple as that. If they lose, all right, they lose outright. But they're not winning games and not covering. That's the key, is that they are winning these games convincingly when they're laying points on the road. Huge start, 41 points. Pulled away in the fourth, even though, I mean, they were up, 16 going to the fourth, but then really put the knockout punch on the Spurs. San Antonio kind of going a little backwards now, 3 straight losses. But the Clippers capitalizing off that win over the Hawks on Monday night when they were down 22 in the third, won by 9. Atlanta, you had to think, this was a very tough game to handicap too, that Atlanta-Sacramento game last night. You had to think that after winning 8 straight and a tough loss to the Clippers, maybe you have a bit of a rough outing against the Kings, a team you just beat a week earlier in Atlanta. Tie game at the half, but then the Kings open it up, go up 11 in the third. Hawks make it interesting in the end. Game stays under. Both matchups between the Hawks and Kings this season stay under on huge totals. The Kings, who were 3-8 straight up and against the spread as a home underdog this year, just their 4th home underdog victory. and they were coming off that 6-game road trip, and now they're back at home tonight against Golden State. We'll talk about that in a second. Brooklyn, when you talk about mailing it in, James Harden sat out last night. He wasn't healthy. And look, James Harden is not healthy. He's doing the best he can considering Kevin Durant's hurt. Kyrie's missing a few games with personal issues. And Harden can only do so much. And he plays every game, so obviously he's going to be a little beat up. But Harden leads Brooklyn past Portland 2 nights ago. Then they go to Utah last night. No Harden. And Utah just blew them out right out of the gate. I mean, look at that. Up 21 at the end of one, laying 13.5. That line jumped from 10.5 to 13.5 when the Harden news came out. Brooklyn's got no shot. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. This isn't, I'm not trying to teach you something and tell you something that's absolutely insane. Look at the LA Lakers now. Take LeBron out. I mean, you took Anthony Davis out. Then you took LeBron out. You see what kind of disaster they are. Harden's going to come back. He's not out. He just rested last night. But look at this Brooklyn team now with no Durant, no Kyrie, and no Harden. This is what you get. And granted, Utah's an upper-tier team in the league, so it's not like they played Minnesota and lost by 30. But, yeah, this Brooklyn team, yeah, you're going to need at least one superstar in there every game. And even with the one superstar, I mean, they're playing well with Harden. He's had an incredible season considering the three of them have not played together much, and it's been Harden and Kyrie for the most part, and we have the two of them in there. You're going to be in good shape. Obviously, Durant puts you over the top. Just waiting to see what Durant can do. That's what's so frustrating about it is not that we love the super teams, but let's see what Durant does here with these two guys in Brooklyn, what they could do potentially against Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I don't want to say the finals because I don't know where they're going to end up. Or even what Brooklyn could do against Philadelphia, assuming they're healthy. And then if Brooklyn were to play the Lakers, I mean, the Lakers are obviously in trouble now, but if they were to play maybe the Clippers, I don't know how pumped up people are to see Phoenix or Utah, or if they're even going to make the finals. But, again, it's just, you want to see the three of them play together. All right, here's tonight's NBA card. And you have the Heat and the Blazers tipping things off in Miami. Heat laying 3. Goran Dragic still a little dinged up. Miami's lost 3 in a row at home. Portland now going cross-country. They play Orlando. They play Toronto. So they're in Florida for a few days. But the Blazers now off 3 straight home losses. No, I'm sorry. I said, no, excuse me, 2. I miscounted 2. It was they won the first game with Dallas. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you try to do this without looking. 2 straight home losses. So they lost by 40 to Dallas on Sunday night. They lose that game to Brooklyn a few nights ago. Now they get 3 in Florida. Then they go to Detroit. And before anybody says anything, they're not going to Toronto. They're going to Tampa. But look at Portland recently. 2-7 against the spread. They had a nice run. But 2-7 and 2-6 since the All-Star break against the spread. And the wins, I mean, look, beating Dallas is a good win. They came back against New Orleans down 17. They beat New Orleans again a few nights later, but beating Minnesota, lost to Minnesota. I mean, I don't know Portland's showing their colors necessarily right now, but C.J. McCollum is back, and I guess he's getting eased back into the lineup. But the Heat, though, I talked about that Southeast Division, and obviously a very good, chance that the Heat should win the Southeast, but you can't take any chances now considering Atlanta's won 8 of 10, and the Heat have kind of gone backwards a little bit. So, Knicks and the Wizards, second time in 3 nights they're playing at Madison Square Garden, and New York laying 3. This seems a little sketchy, this line tonight. New York blew out Washington 131-113. Knicks here won 3 in a row, but 0-1, 0-2, 0-3. They've lost 4 straight off a win, so that's a little bit of a concern. 5-1 against the spread the last 6 for the Knicks, which is good, but 3 of those covers coming as an underdog against the likes of the Wizards. The Sixers twice and the Nets. They beat the Wizards the other night. Now you get Washington for a 3rd time this season. And so far, the Knicks have had their way against the Wizards, 109-91 back here in D.C., and then 131-113 a few nights ago, and you get Washington, who has been totally the wheels have fallen off the wagon for them since beating the Clippers before the All-Star break. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1-7 for the Wizards. The last 8. Utah, they beat at home with no rest, getting a ton of points, but they just haven't really been reliable, the Wizards. But still, it feels like the Knicks should be laying a little bit more. Clippers and Spurs, they do it again tonight in San Antonio after last night's victory by the Clippers by 33 points, 134 to 101. And LA, they've kind of picked things up again. And look, I mentioned that trend. 11 of 12 wins as a road favorite they've covered. 11-1 against the spread as a road favorite. So, or in the wins as a road favorite, I should say. So the Clippers, if you want to back them again, are right, because they've taken care of business. Let me go back to this for a second, to the Clippers, because what I've noticed is on the road in these, I don't want to say two-game situations, because, tonight's a back-to-back, but in two-game situations on the road. The Clippers beat Golden State, then lost to Golden State. Let me rephrase that. Games that they play the same opponent twice. Okay, I said on the road, let's say same opponent twice. Beat Golden State, lost to Golden State. Beat OKC twice, didn't cover the second game against Oklahoma City. They had the Grizzlies lost then won. Dallas won then lost. So 3 times already, the Clippers have won the first game of this set and then lost the second game. And the only time they lost the first time, they won the second time. So the point is that, again, when I said that the Clippers are 11-1 against the spread in games they've won as a road favorite, they've lost games as a road favorite, obviously. But I'm saying if you like them, if you like San Antonio, grab San Antonio tonight. No one's saying the Clippers are undefeated as a road favorite, but in the games that they win, they cover. So don't be concerned don't take San Antonio because you think they're going to lose a close game, is my point. I mean, hell, you might as well moneyline San Antonio if you really like them tonight. You might as well do that instead of taking the points, because the points don't matter. So maybe look at San Antonio on the money line. Golden State and Sacramento tonight. The Warriors making the short trip there to Golden One Center. And you see that, wow, the side and money all over the Sacramento Kings. And recency bias, perhaps, after the Kings beat the Hawks last night. Now you're going to trust them to play the Warriors. Now, Golden State, again, without Stephen Curry. So got to put that out there. He's out with the tailbone injury. They won the first game without him at Memphis. They lost the second game at Memphis, and they lost that game to Philadelphia 2 nights ago. They were down 24 points in the first quarter, came all the way back, took a 6-point lead in the fourth quarter, and lost to a good Sixer team even without Joel Embiid. Now you're facing a Sacramento team who, again, is still towards the bottom of the league in defense. And they played better of late. They won at Cleveland. They beat Atlanta. They had a good win at Boston. They beat Washington. But not really wins again. I mean, Atlanta's above 500 now, actually maybe back at 500 after the loss last night. But let's not make Atlanta out to be Brooklyn, all right? And Boston's been struggling. Golden State's been struggling too. Let's not take that away. But now you're trusting the Kings to lay 2.5 against Golden State. I want to give you this number. Again, call it hokey, call it whatever you want. We're here to give you information. Yes, Stephen Curry's out, so things change with the Warriors as far as looking at them from a broader scope. Golden State this season, on 1 day of rest, they played Philadelphia 2 nights ago. 1 day of rest, off a loss, 8-3 this season. 8-3 in 11 games with a day of rest off a loss. They do bounce back. And again, I'll say it, no Steph. Sacramento's 2-7 with no rest this season, coming off the win over Atlanta last night. The 7 losses, they've come to the Nets, the Bucks, the Blazers twice, the Nuggets, the Heat. So they have had their struggles against the 76ers too. against teams, upper tier teams, with no rest. And now they're playing Golden State, who's not in that level with those teams. But now you're laying points is the key. The only time they won laying points with no rest was at Detroit. And Detroit's one of the worst teams in the league. And they won that game by 3. All right, now the Sixers. They get the Lakers tonight at Staples Center. Still no LeBron. Still no Anthony Davis. Philly won last time at the Lake, or they beat the Lakers at home, rather, on the Tobias Harris shot in the last few seconds. You'd want to take the Lakers only because you want to fade perception. That's it. There's not a lot of reasons to take the Lakers because you see how bad their offense has been the last few games with LeBron being out. And Philadelphia has played extremely well since Joel Embiid got hurt. The number I had the other night, the Sixers were, since last season, I think it's now 3-9 in the Mountain and Pacific time zone. 2 wins came at Sacramento. The other win came at Golden State the other night when they were trailing going to the fourth quarter. And Golden State was without its best player, one of the most valuable players in the league. The 76ers at 31-13, they're on a monster roll. Lost this game in overtime to Milwaukee. Lost this game in overtime to Cleveland. So in this stretch, since February 23rd, they have 2 losses, both coming in overtime. Doc's got him playing well, but now you got to lay 6 against the Laker team that's been struggling. And the Lakers back at home, lost at Phoenix, lost at New Orleans. So we'll see how that goes for the Lakers tonight. If you trust them, if you have faith in them, and both games that they just lost, both as an underdog, they should be an underdog. And the Lakers, it feels, I guess here's the question. Whose talent do you like more past the stars? Do you like the Lakers' talent? When you throw out Dennis Schroeder, Markieff Morris, Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, when you have that kind of talent versus what the Nets have without, when Harden and Kyrie and Durant don't play, when you have Bruce Brown, Joe Harris, DeAndre Jordan, guys like that. Like it'd be interesting to see the Nets play the Lakers with all the stars out and see what these guys can do against each other. Because, unfortunately, the Lakers have played Phoenix with Devin Booker, with Chris Paul, and Phoenix is excellent this season. Play New Orleans with Zion and Brandon Ingram. And then you play Philadelphia with Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. Still a very good team, the Sixers. I mean, there's a lot of role guys stepping up now, but you still have a lot of really good players with Embiid out. So that's the problem, is you got to trust the Lakers, even getting points at home, without the go-to guy. Let's look at college basketball now. And last night, big run at the end of the first half for Pepperdine as they beat Coastal Carolina 84-61 to win the CBI. And good job by Pepperdine there to close out the season, winning 3 straight games. And Pepperdine, look, you're stuck in the same conference as Gonzaga. That's tough. And BYU. And even had this little tough run here at the end. But 3 wins, scored over 80 points in all of them. And look, 3 wins in 3 days. Best team they played was Coastal Carolina out of the 3, and they won by 23. So I got to give Pepperdine credit in that one. Game stays under, easy. Favorite under. Tonight in college basketball, you have the NIT. It is the quarterfinals, and they're all played in Texas. Mississippi State and Richmond. Richmond still without one of its top players. The other top player is questionable. Golden, he's out. But the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, who had a nice close to the season, they went, look, they beat Kentucky and they got embarrassed by Alabama, but Alabama could be a Final Four team, so I'm not going to give them crap over that. That's a bad loss to Auburn. But Mississippi State, pretty decent team against the spread towards the end. They won it against St. Louis, and the Billikens had COVID issues this year, but St. Louis was a team that could have won the A-10. So now they got another A-10 team in Richmond, and Richmond beat, in their last game, it was Toledo. Toledo, Akron, all those MAC teams confused me. They beat Toledo as 5-point dogs. The number swung because of Richmond's top 2 players being out, but good job by Richmond. by coming back after they really could have mailed it in. Lost the last 3 games of the season, lost as a big favorite against St. Joe's, lost to Duquesne, and easily could have been like, forget it, we're done. But they didn't. They beat Toledo. Now they get Mississippi State, and Richmond's a short underdog there. NC State and Colorado State, and the Wolfpack had a great finish to the season. They went 6-1, the final 7. Lost to Syracuse in the ACC tournament, but then beat up Davidson. So, yeah, the A-10. To the exception of Richmond winning that, they went, I can't even say 2 in barbecue. VCU didn't get to play in the tournament. St. Bonaventure was blown up by LSU. St. Louis loses in their first game. Davidson is out, so the A-10, not exact. Everyone gave the Big Ten crap. I mean, the A-10 didn't really have a good showing either in the postseason. But, I'm not saying VCU could have beaten Oregon. Oregon ran Iowa, so let's not think that VCU could have beaten Oregon necessarily. Could have happened, but I would have said no. So NC State, who had a good finish to the season, now they got Colorado State. And Colorado State, short dog here. They beat Buffalo in the first game, and they lost to Utah State, who ended up making the tournament. Still a good team, Colorado State, but that one could be a pass. Boise State and Memphis, Penny's Tigers, they end up beating Dayton. So, yeah, like I said, the Atlantic 10 just really underwhelming postseason for them. And Memphis, who lost to Houston a few times at the end, they lost on that half-court shot towards the end of the season, lost to them in the American tournament. Memphis still had a pretty good season, losing by 2 to SMU, losing by 1 to Tulsa. Penny's done a good job with them, So Memphis ends up getting Boise State tonight, the Mountain West with 2 teams remaining, and Boise hung on to beat SMU, ended this long losing streak. I don't know how much you trust them going into this game tonight. Western Kentucky and Louisiana Tech. This is really intriguing because these are 2 Conference USA rivals who were probably, fair to say, 2 of the top 4 teams in the conference this year. North Texas thrown in there. North Texas won a game in the tournament before losing to Villanova. But, what do you want to say? Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, UAB, and North Texas, that's kind of the class. Maybe throw Marshall in there, but that's kind of the class of Conference USA. So you get these 2 teams facing off tonight. 2 meetings this season, January 8th and January 9th, both at Western Kentucky. And you see at the top of the page, the Hilltoppers won the first game by 2, laying 8, lost the second game by 5, laying 6. So Louisiana Tech covered both those games on the road. Both games stayed under. Tonight, look at the number. And it's a neutral site game. Pick 'em. So Louisiana Tech hung with Western Kentucky both times, split the 2 games, laying a bunch. Now it's a pick 'em. So it's kind of curious. And Louisiana Tech, and both these teams lost to North Texas in the Conference USA tournament. They just beat Ole Miss in the NIT first round. So Louisiana Tech, who had a nice close to the season, they beat beat Rice a few times. These are two good wins against UAB. Beat North Texas. Those are, they had quality wins. And that schedule is not easy, to say the least, in Conference USA. Because they played Southern Miss twice, who was a bottom feeder. But past that, you get Marshall, Western Kentucky, Texas San Antonio was all right. UTEP was all right. Southern Miss, bottom of the barrel, but they don't face Middle Tennessee. Those 2 games got canned. They didn't face FIU this year. They got Rice a few times down at the bottom, but Louisiana Tech had, think about it, pretty demanding schedule in Conference USA considering. They drew a lot of the tougher teams in the conference and held their own. Obviously, you see the record of 22-7. So that's going to be a good game coming up later tonight. Also, we have the Sweet 16, which is, of course, this weekend. Let's go to Saturday. And really nothing much has changed with these lines. This one really is curious to me, this Oregon State Loyola Chicago game, because you would want to think that Oregon State, who has, again, held their own with, well, I mean, held their own. I mean, they blew out Tennessee and Oklahoma State, but they're beating good teams. Now they're a dog again. Is Loyola Chicago just getting a lot of respect now? That's the question. That's what it feels like. And that's fair because they just beat up Illinois. But Oral Roberts may be asking a lot for them to cover again. Last time we saw 15 in this round, Florida ended up covering against Florida Gulf Coast. So now Oral Roberts gets Arkansas, and Arkansas, who is coming off two, I mean, they ended up blowing out Colgate, but that was kind of a close game, and then they beat Texas Tech. So maybe Arkansas pulls out a big win here. Houston and Syracuse, very, very intriguing, the late game. And Villanova-Baylor. Now this could be Villanova's last stand, too. Because Baylor is really, I mean, they picked it up in the Wisconsin game. You know, you say now they come back to the team they were earlier in the season before the COVID stuff. And then on Sunday, let's see if anything has changed. Michigan still laying 2.5 to FSU. Creighton and Gonzaga. I think Creighton can hang in that one. I mean, I know you shouldn't take points hoping teams can hang. You hope they win. But Creighton doesn't feel like they're getting a lot of respect here. And they're still, they're still the second best team in the Big East this year. Oregon and USC, that line swung in USC's favor. USC's still a solid team, but Oregon's played well. And UCLA, Alabama. So look at that. The Pac-12 gets 3 teams playing on Sunday night. Good for them. But I still think Alabama's a Final Four team. I still think they're going to win the championship. So that's the look at college basketball, the Sweet 16 coming up this weekend in the NIT. NBA, you can buy picks for tonight's action. Go to the NBA Buy Picks page. You can buy any handicapper you want, $29.95. Guaranteed picks as well, $39.95. Pay after it wins. If it loses, you don't pay anything. Also, college basketball, there are picks available for tonight with the NIT, and also there are picks for this weekend already you can check out if you want to bypass the NIT. That's totally fine. And the NHL, we have selections also for tonight's action in the National Hockey League, and a lot of our handicappers doing very well in the NHL. So keep an eye on that. Ben Burns, a 10-1 guarantee run in the NHL. So that's our look at what's going on today and obviously yesterday in NBA, college basketball. And coming up tomorrow, we will take a look at the NBA from tonight and look ahead to tomorrow. And again, give you another update on the Sweet 16 and also the NIT as that gets whittled down to the semifinals. We'll be down to just 4 teams coming up in the NIT, and that tournament will be done. But you still have some decent teams in there. So if you want something to wager on tonight, some college basketball, you have that. And it's all neutral site games. So no home court advantage with any of those teams. All right, that's it for today's Daily Insider. Appreciate you tuning in. And again, we will be with you tomorrow at 11 a.m. In case you jumped in late, that's fine. We won't penalize you. You can check out the replay on our homepage at vegasinsider.com. And it'll be up the entire day and night. So if you want to check it out, if you want to scroll through, that's fine. And we will be with you coming up tomorrow at 11 a.m. We appreciate it. I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you. And as always, best of luck with your bets.